how did we come to here? There are always two stories to any kind of situation of oppression. There's the story of the oppressor that is usually based on belief, like we believe that we are superior to the Indians, so we have to take their land. We are superior to the blacks in South Africa, so we have to take actually our God-given land, the land that God created under the feet of those savages or whatever. So you have a story that is based on belief. And that story that's promoted in Palestine is that 6,000 years ago, God created heaven and created Adam and Eve gave Adam the fruit, and somehow God gave this particular piece of land to the Jewish people. This is the most popular story that we have today. The narrative that is based on belief is very, 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 very strong and very present in media, through political analysis, in many and so much literature that is produced on Palestine. So you have a narrative that is based on belief that goes in different directions. The other narrative, which is actually the narrative of the oppressed, which is usually based on facts and based on things that have actually happened on the ground. And that narrative starts actually not 6,000 years ago. That narrative starts in the year 1897 with about 200, actually there were 208 Jewish nationalists that met in the town of Basel in Switzerland. And over 2 days, they decided that they want to turn Palestine into a Jewish-only state. They want to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The way to go about it back in 1897 was the exact same way that you would go about colonizing any corner in the world. Like you have a bunch of Europeans with a plan to go somewhere else on the planet to colonize the space and create their own state on it. So the kind of experience of leaving Europe and go colonize somewhere else in the world happened in many areas outside of Europe. They happened in North and South America. They happened throughout Asia. They happened in Australia and so on. So, for example, that process has to do with three main issues. Those issues are to do with the indigenous population that lives there, what to do with the indigenous population. The second issue is you're after natural resources. Land is what contains those natural resources that you want to steal. So land becomes important. And then your own people. In the case of South of Africa, your own people were the whites. In the case of India, they were the British. In the case of Palestine, they are the Jewish. It's the Jewish identity. And of course, we are ruled by a state that claims to be a Jewish state, but still does not define what a Jewish person is. But in the end of the day, that's the genetic marker that they have chosen for their project. For the past 100+ years, we noticed that the British government adopted the plan of turning Palestine into a Jewish homeland, occupied Palestine in order to turn it into a Jewish homeland, and have been going on through a very steady process for the past 100 years in order to turn Palestine into a Jewish-only state. The way to deal with the indigenous population, of course, in many cases, the indigenous population was treated with complete genocide, like what happened in Brazil, Canada, the United States, and so on, where the entire or more than 95% of the indigenous population would be eliminated. Second way is what the British did in India with exploitation. Third way is ethnic cleansing. And what Palestinians have been subject to for the past 100+ years. With the first step of the British soldier in Palestine, there was no month that passed without witnessing the removal of a Palestinian individual, family, or a community. So put this in the context of what's happening in Gaza. There have been Palestinian people that have been expelled from their homes back in 1921. There are people who are being expelled from their homes today in 2023. Displacement of Palestinian families has been a constant process that has been going on for nearly 100 years. The second thing is you want land, so you steal land. You just claim that God gave you this land. North America was the promised land. North Africa was the promised land. And now Palestine is being promoted as the promised land for those oppressors that control Palestine. So the one thing you find in common between all Palestinian families, including the families that are being bombed out of existence in Gaza, is that we all belong to families that were robbed completely or partially of their inheritance. They were robbed of their property simply because the thief or the state that steals land of Palestinian families claims that the land is for the state to begin with. So one of the things that has been going on constantly is that the state of Israel will make up rules and laws that will enable the state of Israel to rob Palestinian families of their land and property. Like what happened in this picture in Jaffa, like all the families that had their homes being blown away, their homes and property and so on, was stolen by the Israeli government and was used by the Israeli government for the exclusive benefit of Jewish Israelis. So the point of stealing land from Palestinians was for the Israeli government to rob families of their land and then make that land available for Jewish Israeli beneficiaries. And that's like the one thing in common you find between 14 million Palestinians on the planet today, is that we belong to families that were robbed completely or partially of their land and property.